right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of State Champs HangTime, the Hoops podcast. We've been doing it all season long, and
TJ's pumped up.
Yeah, and this is what we live for, right? This
There's a
time
reason
of
to be
year,
pumped up.
There is.
Right? March Madness.
There
and
is.
the Madness has
Yeah.
already
It's
started.
already started.
Day one.
I know. Okay. First off, let me get this out of the way. The podcast is brought to you by BCAM, the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan. Join us for our BCAM segment with Dan Young later in the podcast. And for more info, go to bcam.org. Hungry Howie's Dough Raiser is quite simply the greatest fundraiser for your school, team, church, or group. Your next fundraiser comes with flavored crust.
Nice.
Go to doughraiser.com. Tell them you found about Dough Raiser by listening to HangTime. Okay, so and we're recording this week on a Tuesday.
Yep.
So we already had some earth-shattering results from Monday.
Yep.
We will talk about that and talk about the news we didn't get to last week because as soon as we finished, that's when the whole lawyer stuff started breaking. But first off, let's go ahead and get just, TJ, your assessment on your final rankings, because this is always a big deal. This is the final rankings for the regular season. We don't do it in the playoffs, obviously. Just how did you come about, any tweaks you made and those that you just kept where they were?
A lot of it just had to do. I like that teams win conferences or their leagues. I think that they should be rewarded for that. Ann Arbor Skyline being undefeated, also being ranked high early in the season, and made it kind of an easy pick for them. Even though there must have been some jostling a little bit. With whether the Clarkston was deserved or not after their loss to East English Village. Obviously East English Village losing. Even kind of makes it more worthy for me to put Skyline at number one, just because Clarkston probably shouldn't win that game. Maybe East English just had a great game that day. Obviously, Dave DeJulius played really well. But yeah, let's say some of the teams that Hazel Park has been there. I had to move UAD Jesuit up to number 4 just because they were pretty successful before they got Jalen Thomas, and since they've got Jalen Thomas, I don't think that they've lost a game.
Yeah, they may not have.
And he has been a difference maker.
Yeah, he's not, and he really hasn't even really hit his stride yet.
No. He looks like he's still just going through the motions
baby giraffe
out there. Yeah,
he's a baby giraffe.
It's scary for their opponents in the tournament.
It is
because he can effortlessly go out there and get you 10 and 10.
Yeah.
And
you just
when he really gets his footing, it's like you're talking about a guy that can get you 20 and 15.
Just feed him the rock.
And he's a shot blocker, and that's something that is it can be a difference maker on the high school level.
Yes.
Just because everybody doesn't have that, and it's hard
psychologically.
How do you
that
like,
presence?
You've got to have somebody. All right, 6'3". I think I remember reading something. How teams used to prepare for UCLA.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, we'd bring out a broom, and the guy with the 6'5", he would be Kareem.
Yep.
To go block shots. This is way before. There weren't even tapes. There were record players back then.
Back then, centers were 6'5".
There were record players.
Yeah, there were definitely record photographs.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
The thing with Jalen Thomas, though, real quick, we saw him kind of as the sixth man behind Greg and Ike for 2 years, and it was kind of a wonder of when's he going to get his shot and what's he going to be when he gets his shot.
Yeah.
And then he left, and it was kind of a disappointment because we weren't going to be able to see him develop. And since he's come back, he's been the force that Ike or Greg was when they were with UAD Jesuit. He's been that force inside, rebounder, shot blocker, kind of that difference maker. And you look at UAD Jesuit, and they're maybe not exactly, but they're very similar to what they were last year now that they have that 6'10" guy.
The best thing about him is that he can do a lot of damage without necessarily scoring 20.
Yeah. I'll also say this, and when you talk about Greg and Eke, he got brought along by two guys that are high major guys. Greg gets a lot of minutes at Illinois, or significant minutes at Illinois, Eke being redshirted at Marquette. Mm-hmm. But if you get to practice against those guys on a daily in and out basis, he's going to get that much better. And they're not like a lot of bigs that can go out there and do that. We're going to talk about Clarkston. Nicholson is going to learn from Taylor Curry. And even though Kithier isn't playing, I'm sure that he gets to say, hey, and there's some kind of workout. So nothing wrong with getting beat up as a sophomore by two really good seniors.
Yeah.
Because it's only going to prepare you for being that much better later on.
It's going to be a matchup problem in their district semifinal for Hazel Park.
Yeah.
Who's obviously had a great year, 18-2. Their only 2 losses of the season were to Clarkston, but they don't have anyone over 6'3" or 6'4". And Jalen Thomas is going to be someone that it's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the paint.
He reminds me of Keith Benson.
Husky.
You remember
Yeah.
Country Day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very unassuming,
Yeah.
kind of coming up. And even at high school, I don't think he obviously lived his potential. He did at Oakland. Then he
Yeah.
blew up when
I mean,
he got the
He
opportunity.
didn't play a lot at
Right.
Country Day.
He did.
Yeah, because you had the
Exactly.
Tabbitt brothers,
Right.
You know, and there were some other. You had the guy Daniel Ochoa, who I believe transferred to Royal Oak, chose he wanted to take the WWE route. Honestly, you wanted to be a wrestler instead of a basketball player at 6'10". Hey, if you want to eat, hey, be the next big show,
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. He made his decision early. I think
Yeah.
Kirk Keener was a little ticked off about that.
But Benson
All right.
ended up being one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest post player in the history of OU basketball.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I think he's still playing today.
Oh, overseas,
So,
yeah, doing well.
all right. So you jump Muskegon into your Class A top 10.
Yeah, I think that Muskegon, Keith Guy does a great job over there. You know, they started off, I forgot their bet. They had one loss, was it to West Ottawa earlier in the year. And then since then, they've really been keeping the ball rolling. They lost in overtime to Cass Tech. So, I mean, and then they just beat Belleville at home. Muskegon's a very tough place to play.
Yep.
I don't know, 50 wins in a row or something like that, or 50 league wins in a row that they've had. But Muskegon and West Ottawa, I think, are, you know, those are the two teams that could come out of the West, you know, to make it to the Breslin in Class A. They'll probably meet up later on, I think, in regionals. But, yeah, Keith Guy, I think the coaching has a lot to do with this, obviously the success of teams, but how they'll do in the playoffs as well. But I think the Muskegon was definitely deserved to be in the top 10.
Are they starting to hit their stride? You know, this was a team that we didn't really hear a whole lot about at the beginning of the
They don't have the high-profile
season.
talent they've
Right.
had in the past,
Yeah.
the Deshaun Throwers, the Deontay Davises.
Right.
Didn't hear a whole lot about them, but it seems like obviously I haven't seen them this year, but just looking at results, it seems like they're starting to really come together at this point of the season.
You got to remember some of those early losses, or their early loss. You know, these guys they got their football legs.
Yeah.
You know, and half your team is playing on football. You know, I
Right.
talked with Keith Guy, watching a scrimmage, and he was like, "Yeah, a lot of these guys are not even going to be on the team, or you know, they're just here to fill jerseys right now."
Right.
And then
So the
as soon
football
as,
guys get
yeah,
there.
and as soon as the scrimmage is over, we're going to go down to Ford Field and we're going to watch the rest of our basketball team play football.
It's
And
like
so,
West Side Orchard Lake St. Mary's.
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
so I think that they, you know, that ability to gel later on in the season, and hey, I'd rather be on a nice winning streak, have the ball rolling, you know, going into March and going into playoffs than what you'd see. I mean, wins in March are a lot better than wins in December.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about TJ Kelly's final regular season rankings. Country Day, we talked about Keith Benson. Country Day, number 9 in Class B. Where are they at right now in terms of a run here?
They're
'Cause-
starting to refine themselves as a program after
Yeah.
being really off the map for the last
Right.
3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously we know at the top what Class B is. Where is Country Day in that mix?
Country Day in
their
Class
road.
B, in Class B, where tons of teams could win. I know I picked Henry Ford to win.
Yep.
You know, you still get Godwin Heights. I was really impressed with Country Day's win over Southfield Christian.
They didn't just beat them; they thumped them.
Yeah. They beat
Shocking.
Southfield Christian like Southfield Christian beat River Rouge.
Right.
You know, and so when you kind of look at it in that kind of scenario, now does that mean that Country Day can beat Rouge?
But it also
you know,
kinda-
I mean, they both played against the same team, and it's probably 40-point difference in between.
It's all
the two.
about matchups. How
Yeah,
do
Yeah,
they
and
match up?
obviously the matchups.
What's the kind of the interesting thing to me about this? Just jumping over to Southfield Christian for a second is, and we talked about this on a previous episode, and Jeff pointed it out that this year Southfield Christian seems to have kind of a flip the switch mentality, and that hasn't been. That hasn't been a consistent with Josh Baker. Josh Baker's teams have, no matter who they're playing, they're bringing the same caliber of basketball. This year, for whatever reason, it seems like it's a little Jekyll and Hyde.
And that's something that they have to, you know, overcome, or otherwise those teams that they've been beating, like Oakland Christian or Plymouth Christian or however it wind up coming
They
along.
beat Parkway Christian by 2, and they're going to face a lot of teams like Parkway
They
Christian.
should not be
yes.
losing to
They-
Country Day
yeah.
by.
Oh, I agree.
Right. They lost by 18. They should not be losing to West Bloomfield by 20 or whatever.
right.
That's
Yeah,
just-
I mean those teams aren't that much
unacceptable
better.
losses.
Unacceptable.
But I think the Country Day, Wendell Green is doing a great job. Dylan, I forgot what his last name is. The shooter,
Sandu.
Yep.
And then they got a really
Julian
really nice,
Roper is
they got
really good.
They got a Fab Five, if you will, of freshmen. They got 5 freshmen on the
Yep.
varsity. led by
Manziel's son.
Julian Roper, who's he had 35 and 10 in the game in December. So he's a guy to watch for coming down the stretch the next couple of years.
So they're going to get a lot of great experience this year, regardless of how far they go.
And they're going to take their lumps. Hopefully, I mean, I think that let's say, I think that if Country Day makes it to the quarterfinals this year and maybe have an upset or two, then they're a top 3 team in Class B returning next year.
They got a lot of firepower returning. One of those freshmen is Mike Mansell's son, and Mike Mansell was a running mate of Shane Battier back in the late 90s and ended up having a really good college career at Central Michigan.
I also wanted to throw out there, for the previous couple 3-4 years, I think that a lot of us have been very, very tough on Country Day and Mark Bray, because and there were high standards to live up to. But the last couple of years, and this includes, the last 2 years, I would say, he's done a really good job of developing players and bringing them along. And now he's got the program where I'm sure, wants it to be in the vision that he had when he first started at Country Day. It was
never Bray's fault. I mean,
no, it was not at all.
Add a quick, commentary on that.
Right.
I never blamed Bray.
Right.
I thought it was a decision from the higher ups of the Country Day program that they were going to stop, the pipeline.
Right.
and for whatever reason, they've decided to reopen that pipeline.
Yeah, but with that decision became
start bringing more
criticism and critical takes towards the Country Day basketball program and Coach Bray. But I think he's done a really nice job, especially the last couple of years.
I think there was a push from certain members of the community. We want to be more like Cranbrook. We want to be known for our academics, not for our athletics. And then they got a taste of that. For a couple of years.
Yeah, who wants that?
And then those same people, from what I've heard, went back and said, okay, maybe it's okay to
guys, joke's over.
Reopen that pipeline and reestablish ourselves as the Country Day of old.
Yeah, but Coach Bray's done a really nice job.
All right, guys, you're listening to the HangTime podcast. Before we get to Monday's reaction, which obviously we want to get into,
lots of
we did have one more. You had moved Langsburg up to number 2 in Class C.
Yeah.
I prefaced
that lasted for about 40 hours.
And here I go, and Dansville winds up beating Langsburg last night.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad loss.
This is our
pretty
segue.
Good.
And they're also in the same league.
Yep.
It's hard to beat a team 3 times. Langsburg,
which we talked about on the podcast.
Langsburg's solid. They've got a point guard, Cam Brown, who will probably play in college. But I think that it is what it is. I thought that they beat substantial teams. They were beating Fowler, who's also in their league. You're beating Dansville. You're beating some of these teams who have been ranked throughout the season.
Right.
And I think that they should be rewarded. And again, they won their league.
And that's why they were.
And that's why they got bumped up to number 2. And then I got slapped back to reality.
Right. I was just about to say. So let's move into,
Yep.
again, we're recording on Tuesday, so we don't have Tuesday results on this podcast. But let's move into Monday, because certainly there's enough to talk about. What happened to Langsburg? We'll start there.
I think that they do a great job at Dansville. You've got a solid group, and you've got the big guy in the middle, Caleb Hodgson, who is 6'9".
That's a difference maker.
He's in a small and he's skilled. He's good. I saw them play Osborne earlier in the year, and I think he had like 21 or 22 points, but he was like 7 of 8 from the field, had 15 rebounds, and also had like 4 and 1s. So just the efficiency there, and he can score in the post. He can step out and he could be a face up, play that face up 4, or a pick and pop guy,
right?
And which I think is valuable because it's a tough matchup. And as a guy, if you're big like Jalen Thomas and you could get up and down the floor, then that makes you that much more special. You're just not a space eater who's a sloth running up and down the floor.
So then where do you see Dansville then moving forward? Can they continue this run?
Well, if I can look into my crystal ball,
yes, go ahead. Then.
One thing I
break
didn't
it out.
One thing I didn't realize while TJ looks up is I didn't realize Caleb was only a junior. I thought he was a senior.
And he's a part of, and we've talked a little
bit
about this.
23 and 14 right now.
On previous podcasts. He's a part of a crop of a handful of under-the-radar big fellas. Traditional centers, which is kind of going by the wayside.
Underclassmen?
Well, just the fact that in basketball,
Juniors.
across the board, from the pro level to the high school level, it's becoming more positionless.
Right.
Not the true centers.
Right.
And we've got a couple, or more than a couple. We've got probably a half dozen across the state that are just real solid guys that maybe aren't getting the hype of previous big guys we've had in the state, but are just as talented and will be great for whoever lands them at the college level.
And I think some other guys are in like the little nooks and crannies, as I like to say. Like when you go to Matawan, Nolan Foster, who's 6'10", is
Obviously
mobile is mobile. Like he can move. He can change directions. Like where you look at Jalen Thomas, where he kind of maybe looks like a stiff and stuff like that. There's a lot of
still finding his body.
CJ at MC at Monroe St. Mary's Catholic Central.
So you're saying they're more athletic now. The centers we're seeing now, they're growing up. It seems.
Yeah.
I mean, Marcus Bingham's a great example. He can shoot the three.
Perfect example. Yeah. But I think that he's more of a. But he grew up as a guard. As a kid, Marcus, he's 6'1" as a freshman.
He just
and you keep on growing. Hey, whoever taught you your guard skills, they did. It's good that he retained them.
That makes sense.
Where you've got some other, more traditional bigs like a Caleb Hodgson.
But I think these coaches are teaching a little bit more skill. I think at least like in my day, growing up when, obviously I'm not a big guy. I mean, I'm a big guy, but not too tall. But
well-rounded.
Right, there you go. But I think the way people are coached now, these 6'10" guys are taught to take their game out to the 3-point line, whether it's offensively or defensively or both. And I think that's just kind of a matter of what we're seeing right now.
It's the way the game's developing. What about Dansbury? What'd you find?
Or Dansville.
Dansbury.
No worries. I think that Dansville's going to have to beat Pewamo Westphalia.
Okay.
In the regional. If they do in the regional semifinal, if they do that, then they're more than likely going to face Calvin Christian or Covenant Christian.
So there you go.
I think that Covenant or Calvin Christian, that's a toss up. The last 2 years, either one of those teams have gone on to the Breslin. But I think that Dansville can absolutely hang with either one of those teams. Now it's just about them getting over the hump and the experience that Covenant Christian and Calvin Christian do have. But I think that that Covenant Christian does wind up going a little bit further, and I would not be surprised at all. I think that Covenant Christian does make it to the Breslin.
Well, I think one thing we can agree that we were all very surprised is East English Village losing to Western on day one of the playoffs.
Hey, but never bet against Derek McDowell.
I would say, but on the Western side of it, you got Derek McDowell, you got Trey Jackson. Talking about under the radar stars.
Okay.
Trey Jackson is one of the guys that maybe doesn't get the hype as a David DeJulius or a Spider Johnson or other PSL guys that are going big time Division I, but Trey Jackson's one heck of a gunner.
Well, obviously, because they went out and took it to him. And you can say whether EEV took it lightly or they just got beat. It doesn't matter. They're sitting now.
They're still playing. Trey Jackson was all PSL first team. I think that his biggest thing is just how consistent he's going to be. There will be some games where he didn't have a great game against Loyola. And if you're going to be that star, then you've got to be able to beat teams like Loyola. And I'm not taking anything away from Loyola, but you've at least got to win one game in the PSL in their league, which they didn't do. And all of a sudden you turn around and you beat East English Village, who wound up winning the PSL East.
Right. So what do you think was the issue? Why East English just seemed like they started off so great. Obviously, the win over Clarkston really just propelled that team, and they have all the talent in the world, especially one of the greatest floor leaders out there. Why is it you think that they were beaten so early?
Half court game. You keep them under 70 points. I think that's why King has given them problems in last year's playoffs. Derek McDowell. If we just got to keep it in the half court.
Right.
Don't let them get to 70.
And another thing to throw out there, I think Scott, we had a group text going on last night when it all happened. Yeah. And I think Scott, brought up a really good point, and it was the fact that the PSL is going to beat up on one another. This is a result of that.
For the first time in a decade, we can say that the PSL
many good teams
is playing at a level of top to bottom. The caliber of basketball is much higher than it's been, and you're running the gauntlet when you're going through that league, no matter what division you're playing in.
And your non-conference is hard, but they all schedule hard,
and it cuts both ways. I mean, in one sense, look at what Western did, or look what Edison did in the PSL tournament.
Correct.
So in that case, a really tough schedule. Your win-loss record might not be very gaudy, but you have the firepower, the capability to go and pull upsets. But on the other side of it, it could be, the rigorous nature of the schedule starts to wear on you. Come tournament time, you're not as fresh. You're kind of more banged up because of that level of competition, and then in that case, it bodes against you.
Yeah.
So we got about a minute left in our opening segment. Let's talk about the games to come this week. Just what are some of the things you're excited to see? Granted, Tuesday's games are
the
tonight,
West Bloomfield district is,
but which is where we'll
thrown
be
into chaos
on
right now.
Friday. Yeah,
that's another upset. You want to talk about?
I did
Or we'll
not
be
see
in
that.
Detroit on Friday,
I mean, if you
West
would have asked me
Bloomfield
what
district,
I'd be more surprised at going into tomorrow, whether Bloomfield Hills beats West Bloomfield or Western beats East English,
Right.
I wouldn't even. It wouldn't even be a debate.
Bloomfield Hills was
Bloomfield
7-14.
is not a team that should beat West Bloomfield
Right.
in West Bloomfield's own gym
Yep.
for a team with the kind of top to bottom talent that they have for a
Guards.
team that went to the Final Four last year.
Yep.
That's a loss that was very head scratching.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that, just because it's not a knock on Bloomfield Hills, but they're 7-14, I believe, is what I saw. You got a West Bloomfield team that looked, just as good as just about anybody in the OAA after Donovan Moore, became eligible.
Yeah.
And to see them go out in the first round to me, that was stunning. And I'm with Scott.
44-40, they didn't score more than 40 points.
Right, but I also wonder a little bit what TJ said. Some teams they're forced into get into the half court, and so you
the
get
game
out of your
close.
comfort level.
Hey,
You
Phil,
get out of your comfort level, and
First year
And-
coach Phil
yep.
Kirchen has done preparing this team for that game.
Obviously.
And just like we were talking about the PSL being a real a tough draw this year for the in league competition. Bloomfield Hills benefited from playing that OAA red schedule. They weren't going to win a lot of games in their league, but it's paying dividends in the tournament.
Yep.
It already has.
And you could even say Osborne, who didn't win a game in the East, winds up winning last night. And granted, it wasn't against any of the PSL East teams, but they still wound up winning. I don't think that they're going to get out of their district,
Right.
but hey, it's still nice to win a playoff game,
Yeah.
especially when you've had such, let's say, a disappointing season when you don't even win a league game.
Right.
I mean, that's a long stretch to go through when you're going through maybe 2 months, a month and a half, and you're not winning a single game.
Yeah.
That's tough, stressful on the mind. And I'm sure, let's say this, I just hope the kids went out yesterday, or not went out, but they had a good time and and were able to relish that win.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things when playoff time comes around, they're going to say 20 years down the road, hey, remember that game that we wound up winning?
Yeah.
And although those are the special things that high school basketball and high school sports brings along, it's the memories that are involved, like just as much as, going to college, or I played with this kid, I played with that guy. When they all get together in their class reunions and stuff like that, it's like bringing the game back,
Yep.
I'll see Kurt Russell throwing the ball to Robin Williams or something.
Right. So Osborne has who
That's the
next?
time.
Yeah, Osborne has who next
That would
in their district? Do you know?
I
You don't have it there.
I know that. Let's say this: I was so unexpected for them to win that I didn't
Yes.
even write them
Yeah,
down.
okay,
But I
gotcha.
do know that it was one of those things I kind of saw.
let's bring it up right
Gotcha.
here.
All right. What's another? Obviously, the Henry Ford district
I think
especially the finale, if it ends up being against Old Revers, should be a great game. That's what we're planning on covering
And
on
I'm
State Champs.
very excited about the district I'm not sure where it's being hosted
Renaissance.
at Renaissance. You got Renaissance playing Oak Park,
Yeah.
and you got UDJ
Right.
playing Hazel Park on the other side of that.
Right.
So whoever comes out of that district is going to have a really good chance
it's gonna
at
be-
putting
yeah.
together a long run. It's
Yeah.
going to be a very tough. It's a tough draw, but
Yeah.
that's
Sometimes that can work
That could be the
big to your benefit.
In my opinion, that could be the toughest Class A district.
Osborne has Harper Woods tomorrow, meaning Wednesday, which would be
Yeah.
today when a lot of you are watching it.
Yeah.
Who just hired Rod Oden as
Yep.
their new football
That's
coach.
right.
I know. Shocking.
One thing that
Love Rado.
really impressed me yesterday is how soundly Ann Arbor Skyline beat Ann Arbor Pioneer.
Yeah.
Deshaun Munson, TJ's X Factor, looked healthy. I think he
He
had
had
14-10.
14-10. 14-9.
If he's healthy, and that's a resounding win over
They
a
an-
very quality Pioneer team.
They announced their presence with authority in the state tournament, as
Yes.
opposed to what some of these other teams that
Yeah.
They got to let them know
had
that they're for real.
lackluster first game
Yes.
effort.
And I think the other thing with Skyline, and why I've got some questions about, let's say this, I've been questioned about it, is Skyline hasn't got out. They haven't won their district.
Right.
Now, so when you kind of look at it like that, they're not battle tested. So are they really going to go that far? I think that their senior leadership, Jack Ammerman, has been playing really, really well. I mean, it's tough to guard when you've got a lot of shooters because everybody's not missing 100% of the time. And then they've also got guys who can go out there and do their, they go out there and rebound and do what they're supposed to do. They know that they're undersized, and so they know they pay attention to those little details.
Yep.
And they're not getting ahead of themselves, I don't think, either by looking at TJ Kelly's rankings.
Right. You think as we wrap this up, you think we're going to have any other shockers this week? Kind of the way things went out on day one? You be surprised if we see any real big upsets?
Well, I'll just talk about our the Clarkson factor without Foster Lawyer.
We're going to get there, so let's wait. Let's wait on that. We're going to close with that.
Really and I'm not saying that Lake Orion or Holly are going to beat them, but
it's a tease.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a tease to the end of the show. All right, we're going to take our first time out. When we come back, I'll be talking with Dan Young. We're going to talk about some of the boys' basketball games that have been taking place, what he's looking forward to, as well as the Mr. Basketball candidate list that came out last week. We'll get BCAM's reaction to that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about the girls' basketball districts and stuff that went on with theirs. Regionals are now happening, and then again we'll close with the Clarkson story, which is a big one. So stick around. Hang Time Podcast has a lot more to go, so stay with us.
Fundraising should be fresh, flavorful, and simple. We have the perfect solution at Hungry Howie's. Dough Raiser. Your team or school can sell paper pizza certificates that can be redeemed for one medium pizza at participating locations.
We've been doing this fundraiser for about 4 years, and it's the easiest and best and most profitable fundraiser they have in Michigan.
Go to doughraiser.com to learn more and sign up. Your next fundraiser comes with flavored crust. Welcome to Hungry Howie's Dough Raiser.
All right, welcome back to Hang Time. Dan Young from BCAM joining us as always. And last week we got a chance to talk about the Miss Basketball finalists. Well, the Mr. Basketball finalists have since been named. So we want to go ahead and get Dan's comments on that. You know, it is really, I think it's one of these groups that when we look at it in its totality, not just the champion, but those who were nominated, we're going to look back at a very talented group that we're talking about at the next level and perhaps beyond. Grand Rapids Catholic Central's Marcus Bingham Jr., more than just a big 6'11 post player. He can do so much on the floor. East Lansing's Brandon Johns, 6'9", plays on the perimeter, just a tremendous playmaker. 6'9", Travion Williams of Detroit Henry Ford Academy is one of the best rebounders that we've seen in a long time, really long. On the perimeter, obviously, Clarkson's Foster Lawyer has had a career for the ages. 5'11", David DeJulius of East Inglis Village, despite his team going down, really just a tremendous player and just the true definition, I would say, of a point guard. And, both Lawyer and Julius can run an offense with the best of them, of course, can light up the scoreboards too. So really just a good group here representing 2017-2018 season.
When you watch these guys in their highlights, so the voting is out right now. Mr. Basketball's voting is through Monday, March 12th.
Right.
You just see the level of ability that these guys are going to take to the next level. It's just incredible. I watched Bingham, and he's 6'11", and he's shooting it. He's step back threes. He's obviously blocking shots and rebounding, scoring at the rim. But his skill level, and then Travion out of Detroit, his skill level for their size.
Yeah.
And then you talk about Brandon Johns. Will he fit right in at Michigan? I mean, and he's 6'9".
Yeah.
He does everything really well. These guys shoot the ball so well. David DeJulius speaks for itself, how the effort and the work he's put in and the improvement. I think the biggest thing in Foster Lawyer, obviously, is to go without expected. The improvement that these guys have made throughout their careers is what I've really noticed, and that comes from really good coaching and a lot of time, a lot of sweat, and a lot of work. And so that's what I'm most impressed with, is just how much better these guys have gotten over the last year especially.
Yeah. I know the big talk, of course, this week has been the injury to Foster Lawyer. We know that he has a meniscus issue. We don't have all the details as to what it is, but it looks like from what we've been seeing, he's been practicing, and I think if need be, as soon as maybe tomorrow, this airs on a Thursday for Friday's game, he might play. Maybe next week in the regionals. Obviously, in a perfect scenario for Fife, it would be they just roll without him because they're winning without him. I mean, they still have played tremendous even without him, and if need be, get him ready for quarters and beyond. But again, when you have to face a team, perhaps let's say they get through this week like Troy, who's in their division, who is a good team.
There's no question.
Play them tough. That
very well coached, by the way.
Yeah,
very
right. And it's also, it's one of those things. Do we want to risk any future injury to Foster? Are we putting him in harm by putting him out there? And if he's not ready, of course he wants to play. But there's doctors and people who make those decisions, and it's not taken lightly. It's taken very very seriously, and it's amazing what they can do with modern medicine nowadays in terms of getting somebody ready to play.
Yeah, you wonder if he'll
evaluate.
You wonder if he'll dress, and if the game's close, they roll him in. I don't know. It's a tough spot. You hate to see it. I mean, on the girls' side, you lose two really good players to knees, and now this, and it's just. You hope it goes well for him because he's worked his butt off.
There's no doubt. And again, Clarkson's so deep. We were talking earlier in the podcast about they have guys that haven't played for years. They've been basically riding the pine, waiting to get an opportunity. They get an opportunity, they score 13, grab 4 or 5 rebounds, and they don't lose a step. So that's how good Clarkson is. We'll see how they go moving forward. What are some of your thoughts so far of the basketball playoffs now that we're kind of into it?
I looked at East English losing. Juan Rickman is just a tremendous coach, defending PSL champions from a year ago. He had a Mr. Basketball last year. He's got another Mr. Basketball this year.
Yep.
But Derek McDowell from Detroit Western is as good as they get. I met Derek in the early 90s.
Yeah.
At when he was an assistant at Central Michigan, and he's a great coach.
And he was at Eastern too for a while.
He was at Eastern,
yeah.
and he's a tremendous defensive coach. I'm sure that he was very prepared for that game. So you could see how those things can happen as guys battle throughout the PSL all year, and then try to beat him again one more time and this and that. But I just wanted to shout out to him. He's one of the best in the business.
It was one of the questions we had earlier, and you as a coach can address some of this, is that, the PSL for the first time in a pretty long time was as deep as it's been top to bottom.
Question.
And so as good. There's so many talented players. And these guys at the end of a season are beat up, for lack of a better term.
And the coaching in that league is second to none. And I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I know.
It is second to none. Not only do they have good players, but they're very disciplined, well coached.
All of those coaches have been there, done that. Yeah. There's no scenario that can happen that they don't know.
No, and so that's why these upsets happen.
Yeah, so you wonder, are how far we're going to see PSL teams advance moving forward. Maybe they're a little played out. It could go a number of ways. But I'm sure all of them will be happy if they survive and advance.
Sometimes it's not who you have to play, it's who you don't have to play.
Right.
And so it all depends on the matchup and that night. And so David DeJulius, great career. Juan Rickman, awesome. But even on the girls' side, when you talk about East Kentwood getting beaten the first, it's amazing. Last year, East Lansing losing. They're 20-0, and they lose. There's some great games this week, and so that's March Madness. That's why that's the way it is. And so,
is there anything you're looking forward to down the line? Should it happen, just from a fan's perspective, not judging it in any other way? Just that, boy, I'd love to see this matchup in a big scenario like a playoff.
I would love to see the Skyline Canton down the road,
or
Skyline Novi down the road.
Yes.
And I know there's a long way to go.
Yes.
I'm a fan now.
And we've still got Skyline ranked number 1.
Skyline is really, really good. And they,
well, traditionally, you being a Western Wayne guy, for so long, the heated rivalry, but in a good way, that there is for the Ann Arbor area schools and those in the Western Wayne, because you're so close proximity. A lot of times when you have camps, things of that nature, you share kids.
Just love to see. Love to see great guards go head to head down the stretch, because that when it comes down to it, the CC Canton game the other night, I mean, CC's huge.
Yeah,
they look
I
like
know.
a college team.
It's like 6'5", every
they
one
are
of them.
monstrous,
Yeah, I know.
and they're very good, very
Yeah.
well coached. Bill Dyer does a great job, and but it comes down to the guards that you can't take it from can turn you over, and that's what Canton has. And Novi's very similar.
Yes.
And then Ann Arbor Skyline, wow,
Yeah.
they're really good.
Yeah, they are really good, and that
would be a cool matchup.
Yeah, it would be, and of course, I know that the Clarkston fans would love to see them get a chance to play Skyline because, in our rankings at least, and this is the feedback we
Would that be the
get.
quarters?
I think so. We get the feedback, of course, about
Right.
how could we not have Clarkston number 1 and have Skyline number 1. Skyline hasn't lost this year, but of course you can power rank them however you like. I would like to see that matchup because it's like the new kid on the block and kind of not the old guard, but the team right now that is the standard, and they are.
I would like to see, if it got to that point, whether Skyline could guard Clarkston's big that's going to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Because Skyline has 3 really good guards, and they shoot it great.
Yep.
And they're athletic, and
Yeah.
they defend.
Yeah.
But they're not very big.
Right.
And they're going to have to rely on making threes.
Right.
And, well, just like Canton.
Right.
Although they have the Chase kid, can't think of his last name. He's had a great year for Canton, and
Yeah.
he can score inside, but
Yeah.
he's 6'5".
Yeah. It's a tweener.
And, getting recruited,
some game, though. Yep.
some people like him at the Division II level.
Yeah, for sure.
But Clarkson's got got the big boy inside.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it's a guard's game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a guard's game with the ball screens and slips and breaking pressure and turning people over. It becomes, it's
Yeah.
a guard's game at every level. And
Yeah.
so if you have really good guards and you have 2 or 3 of them,
Yeah.
you're going to have a shot at it.
We had Langsburg ranked up to number 2 in Class C. They lost already, so they're done. And the other one, another game that we're looking for, Class B is so wide open, we
Sure.
think, with so many different teams. One of the games we'll be covering on Friday, should it happen, will be Old Redford taking on Detroit Henry Ford. We've got Henry Ford. All of us predict Henry Ford's going to win the championship this year. Kenny Flowers done a phenomenal
Kenny
job
Flowers is
for
a
that
pro,
squad.
yeah.
But of course, Benton Harbor, New Haven, several others definitely want to change our opinion in that matter. But we think that should be a great district finale just because Old Redford had some really good young talent.
Getting good shots consistently, not turning it over, and getting stops down the stretch. Well, kids will realize that to win, you have to get multiple stops down the stretch and be a two-way player. So that it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it is.
And
It's
that's
gonna
what
be
these
fun.
coaches are all preaching. So
Absolutely. Yeah, do yourself a favor. If you want to check out some really great basketball, there's some great teams still alive in the tournament. Of course, district championships taking place this weekend, and next week as we get into regionals. And then, of course, if you really want to do yourself a favor, oftentimes, in my humble opinion, quarterfinals in a lot of classes end up being some of the best games of the entire year, state championship and all, just because that's just how it happens sometimes. So
They're great.
Go to Callahan Hall and check out some of the Class A quarters that are going on. You'll see what I mean.
Mr. and Miss Basketball, presented by United Dairy of Michigan. Great group of people. Excited about that. And also, BCAM coaches nominate all through the month of March, with the exception of top shooters. That has to be done now. Because we do a presentation at the state championship, but get your people nominated, and before April 1st.
Yes.
And enjoy your March. It's gonna be fun.
Absolutely. We'll have Dan back here next week, and we'll talk about what's going on and so much more. So make sure you join us again. State Champs Hang Time. Be right back.
Coaching basketball is a rewarding and challenging pursuit, but you don't have to do it alone. The Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan are here to support you.
BCAM is the largest coaches association in the country with nearly 6,000 members representing college, high school, and middle school ranks. Members have access to drills, clinics, job opportunities, and it's the only way to vote for our annual awards, including Mr. and Miss Basketball.
Join today by visiting bcam.org, because better coaching always matters.
What's up? Welcome back to HangTime, the Hoops Podcast. We want to talk a little girls basketball here in our final segment. We're also going to touch on the Clarkson situation in boys basketball and what happened late last week and continues into this week on our thoughts with them. But we had some upsets in girls basketball, and certainly East Kentwood was a big one because I had them penciled in to go into the Breslin,
East Kentwood
or
was,
wherever it is this year. Where is it at?
Calvin
College.
But East Kentwood was Tom Markowski's pick to win it all, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
That's a massive upset.
And he follows this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't TJ Kelly
Yeah.
throwing a
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
100% right.
But you look at East Kentwood, this is a team with two girls that were potential Miss Basketball candidates. A team that made it all the way to the finals last year, had high expectations this year. For this team to lose, you can't call it anything but disappointing.
Right.
It's a team that
Props to Caledonia.
Yeah. And the player who made the game-winning shot with 6 seconds left was a softball star, Sammy Girls.
Yes, she is. Big-time softball player.
So just seeing kind of the multi-sport athletes come through. But, yeah, that was a big-time loss. And now I feel like, obviously there's, other teams, but now it feels a lot like Class A is a two-horse race with East Lansing and Saginaw Heritage.
Yep. In Class A, I would say that's definitely what it is.
Obviously somebody can upset. We didn't see Flushing
Right.
coming in last year, and Flushing dominated, Cousino and East Kentwood to a certain extent.
Right. And we've seen this in the boys, too, where a team that maybe has been a dominant D team for so long finally moves up. This was Pittsburgh's turn to move up to Class C, and I'm sure they didn't think that – maybe they thought it was going to be challenging, but they didn't think they would get knocked out so early. But they're done, and that just shows sometimes jumping just one class how much better the competition is. But, they're
I mean, when it comes to Pittsburgh, we kind of expected, we didn't expect them to win a Class C title. No disrespect to Pittsburgh, but there are some, in my opinion, superior teams in Class C, and it doesn't just start with Detroit Edison, who's just killing teams right now.
Right, rolling.
You got teams like Puamo Westphalia, who made it to the finals last year. These are some really good programs. But yeah, Pittsburgh, it was a fantastic run. Chris Hodos has done a really, really good job with that team. And it's kind of tough because this was a really long winning streak that finally came to an end. I don't know the exact number, but they had gone, since that St. Ignace loss in the state finals 3 years ago, they hadn't lost a game.
Yep.
And that included the regular season this year. So, that's one of the state powers going down.
But, that's high school, and that's awesome to kind of see, you have a legacy, an era. It ends, and now you the next class is tasked with rebuilding that. So you've got
ebb and flows.
Yeah.
When you lose a Maddie Clark and a J.C. Berger, who are J.C. went on to play basketball at Hillsdale, and I believe Maddie Clark went to play volleyball at Hillsdale. Those are two cornerstones of a basketball program. That's if you're going to compare it, you're going to look at like what. To keep it Class D, kind of like what the Hunter brothers were at Southfield Christian, what they meant to that program, and it takes time to kind of replace guys like that.
Or the girls at Waterfire Lady Lakes.
Yeah, I mean that's
Deutsch and Roback and Cottrell and Duffy and those that group that won all those state championships. And since since that era ended, they've been okay. They made it back to a Final Four with Tiffany Cenarius, but it's still not it's not state championship or bust anymore.
Hard staying on top.
Yeah, it's kind of, dynasties are hard to come by because it's high school and college. You don't have the same players that you have in in the professional ranks where they stay around for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You have them for 4 years, and maybe that because a lot of them start off on freshman and JV before they even get to varsity. But yeah, with those two losses, it's going to have a different feel to the girls' basketball. Aside from not being at East Lansing, it's going to have a different feel to the Breslin or to Calvin College in the girls' basketball finals. But with that being said, I think the favorites are still there. East Lansing and Saginaw Heritage are still there. Country Day is still there in Class B. Class C, Detroit Edison is still there. I think these are going to be the dominant teams who are going to show that.
I was out at
the teams to be.
District final between Marion and Royal Oak last week. Royal Oak had beaten Marion by 1 earlier in the season, and Marion avenged that loss, won by double digits. When I was hyping her up a couple weeks ago, one of my all-time favorite Marion players who for whatever reason kind of flies under the radar, Olivia Moore, junior point forward. When we were talking about
really good shooter.
Well, she does everything.
Yeah.
When we're talking about versatility, she's the type of girl that's a leader. She's intelligent. She can shoot. She can drive. She distributes. She rebounds. And she had one of these games where she had 17 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, and really just controlled tempo and lit the fuse for that Marion team. So whenever you have a player like that and a coach like Mary Cicerone, and the program lineage of the Mustang hoops regime, you line yourself up for a possible long tournament run. Today I'm going out to see Southwood A&T and Detroit King. A&T's got a really nice dynamic duo in Alexis Johnson and Cheyenne McEvans. And then I'm also interested to see what Clarkson does. I know Clarkson is meeting up with Marion in a regional semifinal, and Clarkson's got Kayla
Lukenbach?
Kaylin Lukenbach is going to Oakland University, and she's a nice post presence.
Clarkson's one of those teams that I feel like could have a Flushing type run in the tournament this year. They're under the radar, but they're still playing really well. Do I necessarily think they'll win a state title like Flushing did? Probably not, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're
just
because
the top of A is so
and then
strong.
a
It's
team
so top-heavy.
East Lansing doesn't lose.
And a team that I'm really high on out in Western Oakland County, Walled Lake Western, with a group that made it to the regional finals last year. This year, I believe they were 18-2 or 19-1 in the regular season. They won the first ever Lakes Valley Conference. They got 2 girls at the forefront of that lineup that are going to play in college. Jordan Walczak's going to Grand Valley State. Janera Flowers is going to Indiana State. And then they've got the X Factor on the bench, Steve Emmert, who Jeff and I kind of know personally. He was one of Jeff's
he was my
teachers.
assistant principal.
And
he may or may not have had a talk or two with me in high school.
He worked side by side with my mom in the Walled Lake School District for a long time. And Steve is one of these guys that lives, eats, breathes basketball. He plays a very up-tempo style of game. He kind of brought, in the 1990s, he kind of brought that Rick Pitino style of full court pressure. I'm not talking about off the court. I'm not talking about off the court stuff. I'm talking about his on the court style. Full court pressure, a lot of 3-point shooting. And he did a great job with the Walled Lake Central boys and girls in the 90s. He took Walled Lake Central boys to a 25-0 season in 93. They eventually lost to the eventual national champion Detroit Pershing team in the quarterfinals. And then he took the Walled Lake Central girls into the Class A state finals in 1995. Took some time off in the early 2000s to the late 2000s. Ended up at Oxford for the girls, left Oxford's girls, and has stepped in at Walled Lake Western. And Walled Lake Western has just done an outstanding job of handling instability. This is their 4th coach in 4 years. And I look for Walled Lake Western to possibly put together a run.
Steve has done just a great job. I'll just add, you look at what that Oxford girls basketball program was before he got there. It was a program that was 5-15 and early out in the districts, and he had that team competing for district titles. And I believe they might have even won a district title.
Western's girls are averaging like 70 points a game.
Yeah.
For a girls team, it's a lot of points.
No, it is. And for you kids out there who don't realize this, about 10 years ago, they used to play 2 different seasons.
Yes.
You actually had to have the girls in the fall.
When I was in high school,
the boys in the
fall,
winter.
yes.
So a coach could actually coach both teams.
Yeah.
And that was kind of better all the way around, I would say, especially with the referee shortage we're having right now. Anyway, what you got, TJ?
Well, back when everything was different, I don't know what season I would have played because golf and baseball are now the same seasons.
Right.
And so I would have probably had to play football.
You've got any girls basketball comments?
East Lansing's rolling.
Okay, there it is.
They are. They had a tough district final. We want to talk about the toughest road to the Breslin Center. East Lansing might have it just because of what they did in the districts. They had to beat a really good DeWitt team in the district final for the 2nd or 3rd straight year, I believe. That DeWitt team was in the state finals a few years back. But East Lansing looked good in the district final, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're the team that's holding up the hardware.
Star power, Jada Hampton. She is a handful.
Yep. Yep. And again, Saginaw Heritage is not going to go away.
Star Power Mo Joyner
Yeah.
is probably the best player that people in Southeast Michigan don't really know about.
Right. Very good guard play, strong inside. And I think the one girl's got the 3 names. I can't remember her name right now, but she knows who I'm talking about. And she is a solid player. And again, one of those who just has to commit.
Yeah.
I think if she's fired up and committed, then just the way they shoot the ball outside, they've got some lockdown shooters outside. So we'll see. Would Saginaw Heritage and East Lansing, would they meet in the finals?
That's
I want to know that.
very good question.
I want to know that for state champs purposes, because that's how we plan things here.
Yeah, I mean.
By the way, state champs every Sunday at 9 a.m. on Fox Sports Detroit.
There you
And
go.
you guys will probably be at Calvin to cover the girls. Yeah,
for sure.
All right.
Yeah. So let's see. On the spot. So.
On the spot.
They would meet in the final.
All right.
They would.
Well, there you go. All right, so we're going to wrap it up today. We want to talk about Clarkston and the situation with the boys basketball team and what happened with Foster Lawyer.
Front runner for Mr. Basketball.
Yep,
Michigan
yep.
State signee.
No doubt, 2 Mr. Basketball finalists. One loses and then one's injured. So who knows if we're going to see. I believe the voting is over.
No, I think
believe
it's after this
Friday.
week. It's after this week.
That's it.
Yeah.
Ends after this week.
And
So
just to give people the
And-
411, Foster had a partial tear in his meniscus last week in a 66-60 victory over West Bloomfield. Didn't play in the season finale against Hazel Park, where just a ton of heart shown by this Clarkson team to take on a
Right.
very, very, very good Hazel Park squad,
Yep.
and beat them by 10. And just got a lot of contributions from guys that maybe they weren't expecting. One of them being
They're
the
deep.
football star Tyler Houston, had the game sealing pick in the state finals in that 3-2 upset over West Bloomfield.
Yep.
He's going to play in the secondary at Wayne State.
Yep.
Been on varsity for 3 seasons, has not played one up until last Thursday night. Had not played one significant minute of varsity basketball. He got the call, and like we always say, in those kind of programs, it's next man up. You better be ready when your
Right.
name's called. Tyler told me after the game, I've been waiting for this game for 3 years. He took full advantage of it, had 14 points, 8 rebounds, played excellent defense. I don't think he only missed maybe 2 shots the whole game, so his shooting percentage was very high. He's got length and athleticism. He's a leader. So
that was huge for them to go out and do that and win like that, just to show we're not going to skip a beat. You know what I mean? And for anything, those other guys can say, yeah, we're not, we love Foster. We want him out there. But just because he's not there doesn't mean we're all of a sudden we're done.
And what it showed also for Clarkson is, defense,
Right.
and a dogged defensive effort can be the ultimate equalizer.
Yeah.
They do a great job defending the perimeter.
And for Hazel Park, a team that scores a lot of points, and their 2 games against Clarkston, I think they averaged like 40 or less. They only scored 38 last Thursday night, and that 3-headed monster of Carl Bowe, David Hearns, and Devin Pettis had some real issues without even Foster Lawyer being there with that defensive pressure. And when you kind of come, when you come with that kind of effort, on the defensive end, you're always going to be in games.
And C.J. Robinson might be the best, defensive player that we don't talk about. You talk about what he did in the state finals last year. A lot of people looked at the point guard matchup. It was Dwayne Washington and Foster Lawyer, but what people don't realize, it was C.J. Robinson playing a lot of defense on Dwayne Washington, making life difficult on him, and that's kind of the big thing that came out of Clarkston's win that I took out of it, because we all know that Foster Lawyer is a great player. Taylor Curry had a coming out game, but C.J. Robinson played a great
And even
defensive
without
game.
Foster, you got a Big Ten bound player in Taylor Curry who's going to Wisconsin.
With that being said, Clarkson's probably, assuming Foster's out for an extended period of time, which is there's no reason not to believe that at this point.
Well, the word right now is that he met with doctors earlier this week. They've given him the okay to practice.
Yep.
What we've heard is that they've shut him down for the districts. He's probably not going to play in the district tournament, which would be, I believe, a 2-game slate. I believe they play Lake Orion on Wednesday, and then most likely they'll play maybe Holly. Will be the winner of Holly Oxford on Friday, and then they got to head to a pretty tough regional. So
The rest of their path is tough.
Yeah.
And they're more than likely going to have to play a team that they've already played.
I just
till
don't
they get to the
know
final.
if
they get that far.
I'm the Clarkston program or if I'm Foster and his family. I understand that you want to leave it all out on the court, and it's your senior year, and you want to repeat as state champions, but you're really rolling the dice if you send him out there for the state tournament, and in my opinion, risking further complications in that injury for his college career.
Right.
I just don't know if it's worth it.
When I look at Clarkston going forward this year, I'm not going to argue with Scott because I think he makes a really good point on that. But with Clarkston going forward this year, I think what bodes well for them is they're going to have to play a lot more half-court offense. And with that being said, having a 6'10" guy like Taylor Curry to dump it down into in the post, I think that's going to be the X factor. It doesn't mean they're going to still win a state title, but when they face a team like Troy or a team like St. Mary's, which I think those are the two teams that they're likely to face in the regionals now that West Bloomfield's out. I think that's their X factor is how well C.J. Robinson and the other guards pick up the slack, and how much success can Taylor Curry have in the post.
Yeah, well, I think you just got to take it, find your niche and get in where you fit in. And I think that's one thing with C.J. Robinson, or anybody, the football player you were just talking about,
Tyler Houston.
Tyler Houston. When the opportunity comes along, you've got to be ready. I mean, I look at it like, what do you practice if you're not ready?
Right.
I'm dedicating a part-time job.
Right.
For something I'm not going to be ready. I really just don't get that. But yeah, I think Clarkston is still going to be all right, just because I think that what they have as far as their system goes, and especially on their defensive end. One thing that might be an issue when they do face Orchard Lake St. Mary's, Caden's pretty good. Caden Prescorn's pretty good, and so he can play with Curry, and I don't think that there's really that big of a difference between Division I bigs and Division II bigs on the high school level,
right.
Unless that Division II big is a Maurice Taylor or Chris Webber or something like that, where they're just that dominant and you really can't do anything.
They're going to have to deal with Troy as well.
Yeah, and Danny Sully is probably one of the
bruiser.
Yeah, he's one of the better guys. I mean, I've watched him play a couple of times, and guys have said, "Who's that?" I said, "That's and U of M Dearborn." To look around real quick, signed with us.
And Troy took Clarkson down to the wire without Jason Dietz, their senior all-league guard in the lineup.
Who just committed to Hope.
He's actually, we wrote about it on my blog at State Champs. The MIAA got a couple of steals from Metro Detroit, and Jason Dietz from Troy going to Hope, and Zach Winston, Cassius' brother over at UDJ, committing to Albion.
Go to statechampsnetwork.com.
But Jason Dietz wasn't in the lineup, and Troy, I believe, had the lead in the last couple, in the fourth quarter possibly. They only ended up losing by, I think, 4 points or 5 points. Dietz is back. It looks like he's at full strength.
Right. I don't think we should be surprised that Clarkston is not really losing a step because of the program that they've developed over the years. A lot of times you have great players because the players they go up against on defense every day, the scout teams, as it were, the Tyler Houstons of the world, are making them better players, which in turn makes them better players.
But I'm going to say it straight out. I mean,
they're going to lose.
I'm not going to say they're going to lose.
You're saying it.
With Foster Lawyer not in the lineup,
calling them losers.
This team is not making the Breslin Center.
Here's that fight the losers.
So they won't make it past the quarters no matter what.
And I think they might have a difficult time losing. I think they'll have a difficult time getting out of the regionals.
Carmen Ainsworth is going to be a tough
and they're playing teams that they've played already, so those teams kind of
they're ready.
them.
They're ready for them. Hazel Park is probably. I mean, I don't think that Hazel Park's overlooking anybody, but they're probably saying, "Look, we're not losing to Clarkston 3 times. We're not losing to."
That's
Clarkston.
where they would get them in the regional.
No,
they get them in the semifinals.
Semis.
But we're not losing to Clarkston we're not losing to them 3 times and twice without Clark and twice without Foster.
Right.
Or 2.5 twice without Foster.
Yeah, twice.
But at the same time, I think that Carmen Ainsworth is going to be a pretty tough battle. And you look at a kid like Mike Fletcher, who's down in the post, who's a really tough kid. And then you've also got Jacavian Lewis, who is, you talk about a lockdown defender. I mean, this guy gets after it. I mean, I'll tell you this. You're going to look at him and C.J. Robinson if they want to meet up against each other, and those guys are going to walk out of that looking like Ali and Frazier.
So what we do know is that Foster's not going to play in the districts. We do know that. He has resumed some light practicing. He had a torn meniscus?
I heard it's a partial tear of
Okay.
his left meniscus.
Okay.
Which is why he's allowed, my guess, without knowing, my guess is he's allowed to practice because there's a possibility that he can't injure it further. And by practicing, going through kind of the normal day-to-day basketball activities to see if
he was gimpy on senior night in the game that he didn't play against Hazel Park. I mean, he was kind of in that player's coaching role.
Yeah.
He was the first person on the front of the bench, and he was doing a lot of directing traffic from the sidelines.
All right.
You think that he's going to have
but when he was walking out and he got a standing ovation for senior night, and he deserved it.
Yeah.
But when he was walking out there, he was walking with a limp.
You think that he's got a future in coaching?
I'm going to say it. He ain't going to play next year at Michigan State anyway. Cassius Winston's got the next couple years on lockdown. So you know what? Get out there, Foster. Go ahead and play and take your team to another title and just leave your high school legacy where it is. Just all Willis Reed.
Right.
I also
live
want
out there.
Walks out there to make the technical free throws that they need him. That'd be awesome. He's just out there and like him.
I'll throw this out there. Right?
Like in the regional, if you're down 10 in the fourth, just bring them off the bench.
Foster.
Pulls up. Exactly.
Foster.
See, the one thing that I think can be said, and we've seen Foster on Twitter saying, it's not over yet.
Right.
So if this is up to Foster, he's going to be on the court.
Sure.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he doesn't know about Earl Campbell, man. I'm just saying. Like, I'll tell you this.
Right.
I'm being funny.
Yeah,
when I say that,
with me watching high school kids when they're injured, and I like to see kids, play with toughness and to play through injury as long as it's something that
without being reckless.
That it's. I look at it so much different than I do like an Isaiah Thomas who is hobbling up and down the court as a professional rather than a 17, 18-year-old kid doing
with
the same.
With a huge future, and you would hate to see him
with a huge future, just because I think we've all seen guys that just don't. Oh man, you don't realize what that guy right there used to be able to do.
Right.
And so much of it is past tense. Look at a guy like Sadie Washington, who suffered so many knee injuries when he was at Western Michigan, or maybe I think before then at Lansing Sexton.
Yeah.
Where
he took Western to the tournament though.
Yeah,
Sadie Washington is the Michigan assistant.
But look at guys like, and obviously
Kalen Lucas in college, what his ceiling could have been.
David Cool,
his injuries. Yeah,
David Cool's injury. This is a kid these are guys, and obviously the difference is Foster wound up already signing with Michigan State. But with
some of those
like
guys,
David
the difference is medical science has come a long way since then.
Yeah, well, David Cool's sister helped with his rehab, but this is a guy that wound up being two-time MAC Player of the Year, wound up leaving Western, and I don't think he played a day. He didn't even want to go overseas. He's like, you know what, I'm good.
I'm done.
Let me just say one thing in closing.
Yes.
I took some heat on Twitter Thursday night from
you deserved it.
Just from Clarkson fans, but I'm going to defend what I tweeted, and I stand by it wholeheartedly. I said Clarkson, Foster lawyer, got a more than well-deserved standing ovation for his senior night.
Yeah.
That no matter if he plays another game in a Clarkson uniform or not, he means as much to that program as the Fife family does.
Right.
And I had some Clarkson diehards tweet at me saying, that's crazy. There's no way he means as much to that program as the Fifes. You're being hyperbolic. I'm not.
Well, he's been there 4 years. He's been playing every day for 4 years.
Look, the program turned the corner when he got there.
Dane Fife has a lot of dummy accounts on Twitter too. So
yeah, I mean they could not get out of the quarters.
Yeah, they were in the Final Four one time. Yeah. A Dan Fife coach team was in the quarterfinals one time before Foster got there.
Right.
They got over the hump as a program.
Right.
Foster single-handedly won them a state championship, and I say that with all due respect to Dylan Alderson,
He
and all
scored
due
70
respect
points in 2 games
to Taylor Curry.
Yes, I know.
Clarkson
Without
doesn't
him, they don't win.
Clarkson doesn't reach the promised land until Foster gets into a Clarkson uniform.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking anything away from the Fife family. The Clarkson, the Fifes are the face of Clarkson basketball. They were the face of Clarkson basketball 40 years ago. They're the face of Clarkson basketball in 2018, and they'll be the face of Clarkson basketball.
They're the face. One is the face of college basketball when it comes to March Madness.
But you cannot underestimate what Foster Lawyer did for that Clarkson, that cage-crazy city of Clarkson, what Foster Lawyer did for that program, and it will be remembered for decades moving forward. And I take umbrage with someone telling me that by saying that Foster means just as much to that program as the Fife, saying that somehow being over the top or being, you're praising him too much. That's just not the case. Facts are facts.
Well,
and the fact is he took you to the state championship.
Won the state championship.
He won you the ring.
Yes, he did.
No Foster, no championship.
Quick footnote for those kids who don't understand some of the glossary terms. Cage is short for cager, which is what is referred to as basketball players. If you look at the old papers,
20th
you'll
century,
see
20th
the
century soccer.
Cagers, the Clarkston Cagers win a big one. So
but
just letting you know.
To Scott's point, and it seemed like every couple of years, when Scott and I were at the Oakland Press, Scott would mention a kid who's incoming as a freshman. He's this great player, and people are super excited about him. And I never got into that, but Scott was the information guy for me. But you look at the hype that Foster had to live up to going into Clarkston as a freshman. He lived up to that hype now in his senior year.
Times 10.
Yeah, even more so. When Foster Lawyer first stepped foot into Clarkston did not have a state title. When Foster takes a step, his first step out of Clarkston as a graduate and a Michigan State bound, basketball player, he's leaving that school with a basketball title, which amazingly, it's amazing to me that they hadn't won a state title yet.
And he's going to leave as a four-time first-team All-State in Class A.
Yep.
Not All-State,
Right.
first team in Class A, 4 straight
So
years.
here's the last question as we will end it here because we're starting to run a little long.
Right.
Mr. Basketball. Has this injury affected his Mr. Basketball hopes?
I would hope not.
I tell you this: if somebody's going to say, "Oh, well, Foster got hurt, I'm not voting for him," I tell you, you think that somebody should get slack on Twitter? I want that guy to say, "Oh, I didn't vote for him because of that." And then, he's on the front running for Jerk of the Year for 2018. And I'm just saying, and halfway through March, I don't think that it hurts him at all. And if anything, if Clarkston winds up losing in districts, then it just even boosts him up that much further, just to show his importance, to that team. But you can't take away his body of work, which has been winning, which has been producing.
They're not going to lose in districts, by the way.
Right.
I know. I'm just saying. You got a smirk on your face.
So this is his award. You feel at the end of the day, it's Foster Lawyer?
I would be shocked if Foster doesn't walk away with Mr. Basketball.
I know the Mr. Basketball Award isn't supposed to be a lifetime achievement award, but if you're somebody that's voting, it's hard not to look at his body of work, which includes his freshman, sophomore, and junior years, and not.
So much of his name is name recognition.
Yeah,
and that's why you got guys like people still don't really know who Marcus Bingham is.
Right.
Right.
I try to say when let's say East English, when they went and played on the west side of the state, I tried to reach out to Grand Rapids coaches, just in that area, and say, hey, if you're going to be a voter, here's a great opportunity to go see them. It's going to take you 2 hours to drive to Detroit, or you can just go to Grand Rapids, Iowa Hills, and watch for an hour and a half.
Right.
Sounds efficient to me.
Right.
So the same thing with cats like Marcus Bingham. I just don't think that his name has been out there as much as obviously a Foster, as much as a Dave DeJulius. The only reason I think that Foster wouldn't win this year would be if Thomas Kithier was eligible, and then you would have the Joe and Malik thing, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody else that's winning, and saying that was Neitzel, but Neitzel put up crazy numbers.
Yeah, right. So the last thing I'll say is, the name Foster Lawyer is synonymous with Michigan high school basketball and has been for 4 years. When you think Michigan high school basketball, you think of Foster Lawyer.
Yep.
And that's it.
And if past is prologue, and Tom Markowski's a big proponent of this, when you go to the Breslin the year before and you blow everybody away, that kind of like what Keith Appling did, he had already won the award after he left Breslin after his junior
49
year.
points in the
finals. I would love to say that, but when I hear that, I always think of Edmund Sumner and I think of Draymond Green. Those are by far, possibly the two biggest misses by the BCAM voters. And I'm not a voter, so I can only add, maybe I'm not a big influencer and stuff like that. I think that players should have their body of work, do for themselves.
Yeah.
But come on, like Edmund Sumner, you're talking about two guys. Not only that, they're in the NBA. Right. And so when guys are looking, if I'm an incoming freshman or something like that, and I'm looking over the entire list, I'm like, wow. Who is Brad Redford? Now I know who Draymond Green is, and people aren't going to say
NBA All-Star, world champion.
Yeah, but when you come back with your excuse for Brad Redford, he made 123 free throws in a row. Right. Like, come on, man, get that out of here. You absolutely got to be kidding me. And I think that's one of the things where
went to Xavier.
Yeah, and two guys that wound up winning state championships the year before with Saginaw and for Country Day, and I think that was just. like obvious misses,
That's interesting.
and the voters can just do nothing but point themselves in the fingers
Edmund,
at themselves.
Edmund was
you know?
hurt by the whole. There's a bias against DCD. I mean, that's you can't
Yeah,
even really argue
that's
unless
even-
you're
that's
Chris
even
Webber
worse.
and Shane Battier, when you're the number one player in the whole country.
You have to be that
Other
much
than that,
better.
unless you're that,
Yeah.
you're not winning Mr. Best.
Got it.
All right, so why take it out on the kids? So anybody
I
who
agree.
voted against him, they should never ever complain about somebody talking about their kids. If a parent walks in and says, "Well, I want my kid to get more playing time" or something like that, well, obviously there was some kind of favoritism that was being played there. So
Heareth
it is what it is.
endeth the lesson. Exactly. All right. So that's what we bring every week here on Hang Time. And so obviously next week we're going to have a ton to talk about. We'll probably resume and record at our regular Wednesday time. That way we can
Do some girls basketball semis previews.
Yes, exactly. So we'll do
TJ's
that.
all excited for that.
And of course, we're going to have some big regional matchups that we want to talk about, and yeah. So there's a lot to still go on. So the show's going to continue for the next few weeks. So make sure you tune in, and of course, comment. You've probably got a lot of comments you can make after this, and just Scott's diatribe alone, you
Yes.
could
And
could go
TJ's
ahead.
diatribe at the end.
Yes, exactly.
I started getting those tweets within
Yeah.
like 30 seconds of
Yeah.
tweeting that out. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
It's all good. So it's
Where'd you play
it's a
basketball?
community, and it's what keeps us all fired up. So keep bringing it, and we'll keep bringing this podcast to you guys. So make sure you tune in next week. We'll see you.